Got one tip for you to remember when you're replacing or installing a new single pole switch. So here's a question that came up, and that is how to wire a single pole switch, which is basically a standard switch, regardless if it's a toggle or a Decora. Your basic switch. You got one switch in one room that turns off and on one light, or maybe a couple lights, or a set of lights. So this channel is not a how-to channel. It's more than that. So we're going to explain why you wire a switch a certain way and how to remember it. If you want a how-to video, there are a dime a dozen. Just search them on YouTube. They're all over the place. We're not about how-to here. I'm trying to help people understand what they're doing and why they're doing it electrically. Trying to break down simple tasks for the average person who's not an electrician. The electricians can do the complex things, and they should. And if you don't understand the simple tasks, even those you should have an electrician do. But replacing a switch is fairly easy and straightforward. There are a few different ways to wire lighting. That is, if you have a light fixture and a switch, whether it be your office, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, a hallway, conference room, you can have this configuration in different ways. You can have multiple fixtures on a switch, and even beyond that, there's more complex ways to wire things. If you have two doors in a room or a long hallway, you can have multiple switches. But when you have one switch that operates a light or a set of lights, there's really only one way to wire it. And one thing to remember about wiring a switch. So actually about a week ago, I was helping someone in California do some work in a garage, rewiring and remodeling a garage. And so they put some recessed lighting in, I think 4 lights coming off of one switch, which was a new switch that was not there before. And that switch was actually a dimmer, which technically works the same way as a switch with an exception. But for all intents and purposes of this video, the device, be it a switch or a dimmer, was wired incorrectly. And I had this person send me a picture. We actually did a little video chat, and I noticed a problem with the wiring, and it's just a simple misunderstanding about how things are wired. Now, I think most people know that when you wire a fixture, a light fixture, an appliance, an outlet, an electrical circuit takes a hot and a neutral. It does not take a ground to operate. It takes a ground to be compliant with the code. But in old wiring, you can operate appliances and lights and outlets without the ground, but any new wiring is going to have a ground. And new devices will have a ground on them as well. Fixtures, switches, outlets, GFCI receptacles, dimmers, they're all going to have either a ground screw, a green ground screw, or they're going to have a ground pigtail sticking off of them for you to attach a ground wire to. So with a standard toggle switch, you have 3 screws on the new device. Older devices are just going to have 2 screws. They will not have the ground screw. Still operates the same way, functions the same way without the ground. Arguably less safe according to the code, but functionally does the same thing. So the problem that came up last week was the circuit, which was comprised of Romex wire, which is 1 black, 1 neutral or white, and 1 ground wire. There's 3 conductors inside of that Romex. And all 3 conductors were connected to the device. the switch, that is. And the lights wouldn't work. Initially it tripped the breaker, and that's why they called me to find out what the problem was, because I had been helping them do some rough wiring. So when I looked at the picture that was sent to me, right off the bat I knew that it was wired incorrectly because of a simple misunderstanding about how switches work. Now, like I said, you can go look at how-to videos on how to wire switches, but the simple thing to remember about switches is, regardless of the ground, if you have a ground wire or a ground screw, tie it onto the device in the box. If not, don't sweat it. If it's old, if it's there, I'm not saying don't sweat it. Is what I'm saying is, if it's an older switch or an older box, or an older circuit that doesn't have a ground wire. But the switch itself has 2 screws on the side of it, standard switch. One of those screws takes the hot wire. Most of the time this is a black wire coming from the circuit breaker or another part of the lighting circuit. The other screw is the wire that goes to the light, which is the switch leg, and it can be a black wire. Depending on how the circuit is wired, it can be a white wire, but not the neutral. And so if you take power from the breaker to the light and you leave the neutral at the light fixture, the wire that runs between the light fixture and the switch, which would be a Romex in this case, that Romex would have 1 black, 1 white, and a ground wire in it. When you have power at the light fixture, you leave the neutral at the light fixture, and the wire that goes to the switch is going to have a white wire in it. That white wire is going to be the switch leg. It's not the neutral. You identify it with a piece of tape, a little black piece of tape on it, and it is not the neutral. It has power when the light is on. In the case that you take power to the switch first and then go to the light, you still have that Romex wire between the switch and the light. That Romex wire has a black, a white, and a ground in it. The white wire is the neutral in this case. The black wire is the switch leg. That switch leg comes from the screw on the switch and goes directly to the light. The neutral wire, and this is what a lot of people miss, and this is what was missed last week, the neutral wire does not touch the switch. It doesn't go to the switch. The neutral is never switched. So the problem that I saw last week was the neutral was tied to the switch, which caused a direct short and tripped the breaker. So in any switching situation, single pole, 3-way, 4-way, when you have more than 2 screws on a switch, you could have 3 screws, 4 screws. None of these type of switches take a neutral. The neutral does not touch the switch. Now, there is one exception, which I might do a different video about to explain further. There is one exception, and that is an electronic switch. Some dimmers, old slide dimmers, electronic dimmers, controllers, photocells, timers, anything electronic, an electronic device that controls lighting, may have a neutral for the sake of the electronics inside the device. But you'll have to check that manufacturer's specs on their installation requirements. So a lot of times, they're going to give you a little box or whatever the package is. It's got a big crazy piece of paper in it that you fold out, and it's got a bunch of drawings on it in 5 different languages. You got to find out if that device takes a neutral or not. So sometimes the ground will work, but sometimes the neutral is needed. But in those cases, you got to look that up in case by case. But a standard switch that's a mechanical switch, off and on, just flips up and down, does not take a neutral wire. You might see a white wire attached to a switch, but in most cases that is a switch leg. It's not the neutral, and so you should be able to identify that before you make that determination. But so the thing to remember about switches is the neutral is not switched. It doesn't touch the switch. It passes by the switch and goes directly to the light. So that's it. That's the thing. It's actually pretty easy. So I know this video is probably about 10 minutes or so. but save you a lot of time and hassle when you're wiring a switch on a new circuit. It doesn't need to be complicated. Like I say, there's a dozen how-to videos out there on how to wire a switch, and I just wanted to make that clarification for you. So hope that helped. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.